The Dynamic Softbody Interaction Project. From the little that I know about X particles, I can already tell that this motion graphics example has to do a lot with using the weight of all of those particle spheres to change how much the cloth is going to stretch and how much structure it's going to have. I can also see that in some parts of the cloth over here, the mesh is just not holding really well and it looks kind of weird. So I'm going to open up the project file and see what that animation looks like. So we are on frame 0 and I'm just gonna press play. Now I'm gonna go off the camera just so we can see the whole thing. I'm gonna hide the lights, go to XP system. I'm gonna hide the icon in the viewport, hide the camera, and we can see that we have 5 pieces of cloth. Let me go to frame 1 and we can see that they're being held from the corners. We have this rectangular emitter just emitting down, and we also have a wind force pushing on the positive X direction. And that seems to be everything that is happening in this simulation. Just a lot of particles being emitted down towards this hanging piece of cloth, a wind force, and those particles just stretching out the structure of that piece of cloth. Now, since this example is already finished, you can just change the materials, change the colors, and go straight to rendering. And even though this is an unboxing, I want to break down the scene so I can understand how to do it myself. And then at the end, I'm just gonna play with the parameters, add my own materials, and just create a render to post on social media. So if you don't want to see all this and you just want to see the final video, follow me on my Instagram, is down in the description. Now, if you do want to see how I break this down, let's go. Okay, so just like my other videos, I'm gonna go ahead and deactivate the modifiers. I'll go and deactivate the generators. Well, we're actually not even using generators. Deactivate the utilities, the dynamics, and we have 2 emitters. So I'm gonna deactivate the first one, go back in my scene, and I'm gonna hide that pieces of cloth. And this is how I like to start, just with the emitter. So I'm going to select it, make the window a bit bigger, and in the object section I can see that this is a emitter in the shape of a rectangle. It's emitting on its Z plane. Do not confuse it with this one. This is the world Z plane. This never changes. This emitter, it's emitting on its own Z plane, which is technically down, and technically on the world axis is -y. Now go into the emission tab. We can see that it's a rate emission. The particles have a full lifespan. They start emitting at 0 frames, but they actually end emitting at 60 frames. And the birth rate is telling us that they're emitting 10,000 particles. The speed is 150 centimeters, and they have a radius of 5 centimeters. So just to play around with it, I'm going to change this to 30,000 at a speed of 100 with a variation of 40 and a radius of 3. This is up to you. I just want to play around with the numbers. I'll start the timeline, and that's probably too many, so maybe I'll just do like 15,000. Go back, start again, and probably change that variation speed to 80 because they're emitting pretty evenly. Go back, play it again, and yes, I like that a little bit more. Now checking the other tabs, I do not see anything else that we need for this, so I'm gonna go ahead and activate the other emitter. Now clicking on the first frame, you can already see that this is emitting from that cloth object. But if I go to the object tab of that emitter, the emitter shape is a rectangle, but because this soft body cloth has the XP dynamic tags, it's gonna use the shape of the cloth, not the rectangle. And if we go to the emission, we can see that the emission type is controlled only. They have a speed of 0 and a radius of 5. So I'm gonna change that to 3, just like the other one. Next, I'm gonna activate my utilities, make that cloth visible, go back in the timeline, and just play it again. Now it seems to be working just fine. The particles are emitting down and they're reacting with the soft body cloth. It's kind of stretching it. We don't have any gravity, we don't have any wind, and our dynamics are not even activated. So this shape that is being emitted pretty much stays the same the whole time, and it might be a look you're going for, but I want to see what the other things are doing first. So going into the soft body cloth, we have the material, we have the XP pin tag, which I assume is similar to the Cinema 4D simulation cloth belt, and that is going to use a point selection. So if we go to points, you can see which points they use to just hold the cloth together, so the gravity and the wind doesn't really affect those points. Now for the next tag on the soft body cloth, we have the X particle dynamics tag, and if I hide the soft body cloth for a moment, we can see that this is what is driving the XP emitter and creating those particles from the cloth. If I go back to the tag, we can see that it's being distributed on the vertices. So I'm gonna try and change that to vertices plus the middle point. Go back, go forward 1 frame, and yes, we have a denser mesh. So if I enable the cloth again, we can see that it's distributing the particles on the vertices of those polygons and on the center. I don't know if that's gonna work well, but I'm just gonna try it. Now they're set to be triggered immediately. Don't know what the offset or the damping is gonna do. Update position, scale, and rotation is activated, as well as update points. And I think what that's gonna do is just update it every frame. So if I deactivate them, let's see what it does. Now nothing is happening. So let me activate them, go back, and there we go, it's working again. So you have to have this activated in order to update the information of those points. I see a radius option, so I'm just gonna switch to 3, so it's just like the other ones. And in properties, we can see that it's using the XP emitter dynamics emitter, which if you don't have, you're just gonna have to create one with add emitter. Density 1000, friction 0, bounce 80. Maybe I'll decrease that 80 to 45. Go back, and I'm gonna activate the dynamics, which is this XP fluid that is gonna make those particles act more like a fluid. In this case, the accuracy is on medium, but for my renders, I'll probably use accurate or high. The mode is into velocity. I don't know what the pressure, external pressure is about, nor the damping, nor the friction iterations. So I'm just gonna leave that how it is. Go back, press play, and I think that I can see those particles just acting a little bit more fluid, just sliding down those pieces of cloth. But it seems like it's a pretty thick fluid, and we might need to activate those modifiers at this point. So I'm gonna go to modifiers, activate them, and I'm just gonna start with the gravity. Go back, press play, and now those particles are coming down much faster, as well as the cloth, and it's just being stretched down by the weight of those particles. Wow, so those particles must be really heavy, and that cloth must be really elastic and stretchy. But that is a really cool effect. So now I'm gonna activate the XP wind, go back again, and just see what it does. Pretty much the same thing. Everything is just moving more in this direction because of the wind. But once those particles are done emitting, the cloth is gonna be activated. Somehow it's gonna become super stretchy and just launch those particles up. So let me zoom out one. You see, it's just sending a lot of particles out. Go back, zoom out a bit, and once they're done emitting, the pieces of cloth are just gonna launch those particles into the air. So that's a pretty cool effect. I probably will add way more particles because it's kind of losing its structure once they're launched into the air. So maybe I'll add a lot more particles at the end. So that is pretty much it. That's our simulation. I only changed a couple of parameters, but now is the time to add my own materials. But just to double check that this is the look that was promised to us, I'm gonna go into the camera, activate my cycles for the real-time preview. I'm just gonna dock it over here, make it a little bit bigger, and just press play. I'm gonna zoom in a bit more, activate the lighting and the environment, and there you go. I mean, it does look like it. I'm gonna pause it and maybe go about right there. Zoom in. It's a bit out of focus, so I'm gonna click here to pick our focus, pick a point over here in the particles, maybe the ones over here that are a bit closer to the camera, and I'll increase the samples to about 25. And yes, we can see that it looks pretty much the same as the example that they gave us. I did change some of the parameters, so it might not look exactly the same, and they do not specify which frame this is on exactly. But yeah, this looks just like advertised. Out of the box, this project file works just like it was intended to do. I do want to take a look at the materials that they're using, and for the particles, they simply have an emission node, which you can easily just change the color, set it to yellow, start the preview. Oh, never mind, they're still green. Maybe I need to restart the simulation. They are a bit yellow, so maybe I'll change to blue, darker blue, start simulation again. They're still green, so I'm gonna go to the XP emitter, go to display, and I think this particle color is the actual color that's going to be displayed. So let me change that to a blue, press OK, go back, play it again, and there we go, they're blue now. So now that I think about it, this XP emitter has the cycles for the instant stack, which if we take it away, it's not gonna allow cycles for the to see those particles. Now you can see some of the blue ones on the cloud over here because it does have the cycles for the instance. So let me bring it back, and instantly you can see those particles being generated. And in that same cycle for the instant stack, we can change the parameters of those tiers. Let's say we want to make them bigger, 200, but we don't want them to be all 200, so maybe 100 of variation. Let's do 200 so you can see more of that change. You see some are big, some are pretty small. It depends on the look that you're going for. So I'm gonna hide that emitter and actually look at the material on this cloth. I'm gonna activate the real-time preview, just pause it for a bit, and their final output is composed of mixed shader. Our first shader is this principal BSDF. The base color is this color ramp gradient over here, which we can see in the wireframe of the cloth. Now this is interesting. The factor is being driven by this gradient texture. This is my first time seeing this, so I don't really know how it works, but it's set to linear. I'm gonna try to change it to diagonal. Press play, and I think that is just changing the way the color is being distributed. I'm gonna change it back to linear, play it again, and yes, that is just distributing that color ramp gradient in a different way. So just playing around with it. Now there's this emission node coming missing out of the color of the color ramp, and it's not attached to anything. So let me attach it to the emission of the BSDF. Not working. Let me attach it to the first shader instead of the principal BSDF. And yeah, that's just gonna make those lines emit the color. But I'll just keep it like the original for now. And for the shader number 2, I'm gonna follow down the node and see that it's another principal BSDF. Got a base color of black, specular, some roughness. But I'm mostly interested in this polygon wireframe node. So I'm gonna open it up and just see how this is working, because it's using the edges of the object to create that material, to color up the lines. And okay, we're gonna get into some math. Okay, so it's got a math node that is greater than, don't ask me how it works, with the first value being a color ramp, the second value, this thing, I've never seen this before. It looks like a knob, so let me know if you know what this is down in the comments. And then value 3 is just set to 0. So going back to value 1 is this color ramp, but then it has a math divide node, and its value 1 is gradient texture, and then a geometry node. No idea how that works, but I am seeing over here that you can change the size and the thinning, so that's pretty useful. So I'm assuming this is going to change the size of those lines. So let me activate the real-time preview, maybe change my size to 1, the thinning to 1, and from there I just have a reference of what these things are doing. But that is everything that came with the project, the simulation and the materials. This is how they told us it was going to look like, and it's pretty much accurate. So now is my time to play around with the materials, play around with the lighting, and I'm actually going to be using Octane Render for this. At the moment, my only reason to use Cycles 4D is if I have to create a specific material for the particle emitters. And since we're not using this particle info node, I don't really see a reason to use Cycles 4D in this project. I like Octane Render, I like its denoising, and I just have a lot of materials in that rendering system. So I'm going to fast forward the next portion of the video and play back to normal speed once I'm done playing around with the materials. So these are the materials that I decided to go with this composition. For the cloth, I decided to use this transparent lavender nylon material that I just like how it is. You can see through it and how all the spheres are just like stacking up together, stretching out the cloth. And for the spheres themselves, I use this subtle yet multi-color material. As you can see, some of them are blue, yellow, orange, and pink. And the lines that you see are metallic. They go throughout the sphere and they just give it that extra detail. For the background, I activated the alpha channel because I'm gonna compose this in DaVinci Resolve and I'm just gonna add a background to my liking. And maybe in the future, I'll just create some variations for this. And now that I understand how this is working, I can just create my own from scratch. But I truly encourage you to just break it down, see how it works. So maybe you can make your own version from scratch or you can apply those same principles to a different simulation. And that is everything for this unboxing. If you want to see the final animation, go to my Instagram, link in the description. Check out my portfolio, check out my ArtStation print shop. And if you watch my last video, I give a quick shout out to this company that I buy alkaline water from. And yesterday I went to the store and the manager actually gave me permission to just create some really cool 3D content for his company. And to start with, I decided to just recreate their logo in a 3D version. So this is the current logo that they have. And I decided to create something with the same design, just a little bit more modern, and just make it 3D. And I think it looks really cool. And because I don't really post a lot of client work in my social media, you can check out K&H Alkaline Water. They're from the Houston area, and the managers gave me permission to just create a bunch of 3D content for him. He's a really cool guy, and I'm just gonna use this company as an example to just share some of that client work with you guys. And if you have any comments or suggestions, just leave them down in the description, and I'll see you in the next video.